What is up, guys? It's Ethan with Soccer for Us Kids, U.S Kids. This is explainer video number 7 for you guys, and this one is going to talk about expensive teams in the Premier League that spend loads of money versus unexpensive teams in the MLS that spend less money, why that is, and how it affects the teams. So, when we get started, first off, Premier League teams use a lot more money than MLS teams. That's because the TV revenue is so much. They get a lot from TV revenue and a lot of money that is given to them from that. But also, there are a lot of more wealthy owners in the Premier League. We'll get to why these wealthy owners can splash the cash on these Premier League teams. The MLS, it's changing a little bit. They want owners to be willing to spend that cash, be willing to splash the cash. And so there are different rules now that are making sure that managers will, or owners will, do that. They want teams to be more like Atlanta United out of the gate, who's winning a lot of games and splashing the cash on players like Ezekiel Barco, who was the highest paid teenager in MLS history, and I think it was the highest transfer fee in MLS history as well, and he's 18 years old. They want people to be more like that than someone like Minnesota United, who hasn't paid that much money for players, but are starting to and building up to that point. Atlanta United right off the gate was paying for players. European teams have very wealthy owners that spend loads of money. However, they don't have a salary cap. A salary cap is something that the MLS has that makes it harder for people to splash the cash. In the Premier League, owners can pay as much as they want for a player here, as much as they want for a player here. They can give them as much wages as they want. And you've seen this in nowadays. The Chinese league can spend as much money as they want. They have loads of money from very wealthy owners. They have started to maybe spend a little less because they've been getting into financial troubles. But teams in the Premier League spend a lot of money. Someone like a Manchester City and even a Liverpool are paying hefty fees for players. Liverpool paid $75 million for Virgil van Dijk, $75 million for one player, when the highest fee in MLS history is Barco, who was around $15 million. This is just a different way that it is. In the USA and the MLS, they have a salary cap, which makes them only allowed to spend a certain amount. And once they get to this salary cap, they can't spend anymore. So this makes it so that they can't spend as much money as these Premier League teams. They also have designated players. Europe does not have these designated players. Designated players allow them to kind of get around the salary cap. For designated players, you're allowed to pay them as much as you want, and you're allowed to pay a certain amount above the average. So a salary cap also makes sure that you can only spend so much on a player. However, designated players, you can spend more, like Ezekiel Barco with $15 million. You can have a certain amount of players that you can spend a certain amount for. So a normal player that's not considered a designated player would be getting paid less. But if you find a designated player, someone that's very good and that you want to have on your team, you can have 3 designated players. You have 3 slots, but once you're past that designated player amount, you can't have any more. Atlanta United is a team that we can look at. When they started, they had 3 designated players, one of them being Josef Martinez, one of them being Miguel Almiron, and one of them being Hector Villalba. Since then, Atlanta United has used their TAM money, which is a new sort of money for MLS teams to let them spend a little bit more and make MLS more exciting. This TAM money they used to pay Hector Villalba's wages so that he was no longer a DP, which is a designated player. This allowed them to go out and buy Ezekiel Barco and make him a designated player. Now they have 3 designated players. They can only pay players so much before they max out, and their teams paying the larger wages, and they can do this by paying the wages for the player and also paying fees for players until the designated player is almost like a wild card. So you may be asking, if this makes them not be able to pay as much, why have a salary cap? And that's a good question. But the reason that people have salary caps, it happens all around America, and the NBA and the NFL, they all have salary caps. And salary caps make so that there's not 1 or 2, maybe 3, even 6 teams that are just dominating the league because they have so much more money than everyone else. This is so that every team, and it's a little more equal. And you'll see in the Premier League, teams have so much more money than other teams. And so someone like Liverpool, Man United, Manchester City, Chelsea, Tottenham, Arsenal, they all have way more money than other people. So they're always up there at the top. This salary cap makes sure that that it's not like that. They want it to be more even, so that each team can only have so much they can spend. So it makes sense to make it more even, which makes it, in some cases, more exciting, because the teams aren't so unevenly spread, or the top team's killing the bottom team. So that's really interesting, and that's how they do that. And so that's almost a year or two ago, Leicester City won the Premier League. And if you look at this expensive versus non-expensive fees, it's why Leicester City is so astonishing, and their story is so astonishing, because in the NBA, a team coming from the bottom is not quite as big of a deal, because they're still able to have the same amount of money that they're paying. But in the Premier League, teams like Manchester City, Liverpool, Manchester United, they all have an abundance of money that they're spending. And someone like Leicester City is spending a little less money, and they have someone like Jamie Vardy and Riyad Mahrez who end up destroying the Premier League and ending up winning it. It's such an astonishing story, because they have so much less money than other teams. It's like a motivator for those bottom teams to really keep fighting to be in the Premier League. And once you're in the Premier League, you get a lot more money than when you're in the Championship, which really helps these teams out, because once you get to the Premier League, you are a lot better than other teams money-wise. And so if you drop out, it's hard to get back, because you're back on the same level playing field. But once you get there, it's when you have a lot more money than other teams. And so Leicester City had more money than teams below them, but they had a lot less money than the elite in the Premier League. So that makes that story so astonishing. So to recap this video, expensive teams in the Premier League versus non-expensive teams in the MLS, a lot of things that happen here is TV revenue. Premier League gets a lot of TV revenue. Also, Champions League gives them a lot of revenue. And the biggest difference is the salary cap. And the salary cap really makes it so that MLS has things like designated players, things like TAM money, and this just allows them to have a more even playing field. And that's why it happens, and why the teams are so vastly different, because of the money that they're allowed to spend. Thank you for watching. Click the subscribe button, hit the like video, and see you later.